Good evening, everyone. I'm Camille Nash, and welcome to the Bullpen. Listen, we are so excited to have you tonight. And listen, if you've been on this journey with me for any length of time, you already know that I have an affinity for whales. So there's no surprise for you. I'd love to tell you that it was birthed out of some tremendous story where you could hear the melodic violins playing in the back, but in good godly fashion, as I like to say. God was able to take those lemons and turn them into lemonade. So here we are. During the pandemic, as I call it, many people call it the pandemic. I call it the pandemic because there was another plan in mind. And during that time, I found myself in a lot of rooms, boardrooms, courtrooms, tons of social media rooms. So I decided, after hearing so much conversation, like just tired of hearing men attempt to tell women how to live their lives and what it should look like, and women attempting to tell men how they should live their lives and what it should look like. So I decided, why not create a space where I could invite men from all around the world, and you get it, all around the world, that would be able to speak directly to the heart of men. Who better to learn from a man to be able to share with another man? Which is why we're here tonight. All season long in season 2, we are talking about meaningful relationships. I don't know about you, but it is really important that we all get our ships in order. All right, so tonight we're going to be talking a lot about the navigating relationships. And I want to talk more particularly around the collaboration and communication. Like, what does that really mean when it comes to relationships? So, the gentleman that I'm going to bring to the platform tonight, this guy or this gentleman here has been all over the globe doing multiple things, and he's going to get into it. I can't wait to really talk more about how he's been able to not only partner, but really found the importance of collaboration capital. And so, because relationship capital means so much, I thought, why not bring not only a veteran to our platform, but someone who has graced the stages and places of many different areas and many different industries. And so, without further ado, let me not belabor the time. Let me take a moment to introduce to some and present to others in the form of Dr. Gordon Bradshaw.
This is a moment I've been waiting for, and I appreciate this grand opportunity to share this platform with you. I'm honored by the invitation, and I know what you're doing is meaningful, is powerful, and it's getting the attention of people. And I always like to be a part of things that are meaningful and powerful. And so here we are, and hoping for a fruitful session on tonight. Thanks
Yes,
again.
yes, indeed. And listen, I know that congratulations are in order. I couldn't start this conversation off without taking a moment to pause and celebrate you. I don't think enough people celebrate one another because we're always so busy gallivanting, trying to get our own trophies and not take a moment to celebrate our fellow brothers and sisters. So I want you to, if you don't mind, you've got a very lengthy bio, and there's some miraculous things that we find in your CV. I want you just to, for a quick moment, tell our audience a little bit about Dr. Gordon, maybe something that we couldn't find in your resume, and what you hope maybe to get out of this conversation tonight.
Well, where do we start? First of all, I'm a man of faith. I believe in God. I need God in my life. That's my starting point. I came into service with God in 1973. That's when I turned my life over. And some people say, well, I haven't looked back. Well, I look back just to remember where I came from, not to go back there, but as a point of reference, so to speak, so we can keep moving forward and gain as much momentum and distance from that starting point as possible. In the kingdom of God, we're serving as a chief apostle, bishop in a ministry network called the uh, Movers and Shakers Network, is what it used to be called, Global Effect. But now it's the Demonstration Nation Global Network. And I believe this, that at the point in time where we are now, Dr. Nash,
Mm,
we've heard so much talk about everything. Let's get boots on the ground. Let's get our hands to the plow and
yeah.
let's demonstrate what it is we teach and what it is we project. And so our motto is
Mhm.
demonstration is the art of proof.
Woo.
Also, have served in the United States military. I'm a Vietnam era veteran, United States Navy as a damage controlman, ships firefighter, emergency services. I'm a retired chief level officer from 3 fire departments, and have had the opportunity to serve the general public and the community since December 1974 in that capacity. Now, I have been retired now from the fire service for 20 years, but I still serve in the capacity as a consultant because I want to offer my skill set, offer my experience to the young firefighters and EMTs and paramedics that are coming up now today. As a matter of fact, I make it a point to stay acquainted with them. And I often get teased a lot. They say, Chief, you want to come back on the job? Well, no, I don't want to come on the job again. But what I will do is give you the benefit of my knowledge. Now, Dr. Nash, I got tricked about a month ago. I was invited to the Fire Academy to address a new class of fire candidates. And while I was there, the alarm hit and they said, Chief, you got to go with us. I said, what do you mean I got to go? They said, well, you got to go. So they tricked me into going to a fire. Dr. Nash. I was wet. I smelled like smoke. And by the time it was over, I had to roll all my windows down in my car on my way home so I wouldn't offend anybody once I walked in the house. They tricked me. They said, Chief, we're glad you came with us. It reminds you of the old days, right? I said, yeah, but you guys are doing a lot of things differently now. But they appreciated the old school flavor that we brought. And I always take interest in the new firefighters and the new equipment because I may need them myself one day. But we do a lot of different things, Dr. Nash. We're author of over 10 books. We're also the co-founder of Community Civility Counts and World Civility Day. I'm pretty sure you've heard of that. That's something that we put our shoulders to the wheel on that. We were successful working in conjunction with Ambassador Dr. Clyde Rivers of iChange Nations. And I appreciate the progress we've made in that area. We're still working on a lot of things because civility is never going to be out of style. It'll never be to the point where you've done so much of it you can't do anymore. So now,
we need it.
It's just the way it is. Also, we have what is called the Mizra Academy Governmental Empowerment Center, a fully accredited college where we award degrees and certificates in regard to spiritual government. Spiritual government. We wrote a book some time ago called I See Thrones, and it's about the 7 mountains of culture and what sainthood and what the life of the believer looks like, boots on the ground.
I want to talk about that boots on the ground. I really want to dig into that.
Talk to me. I'm here. I'm ready.
So tell our audience, what does the boots on the ground really mean? Because many of us may have our own definition for it. What does that mean, and what does it look like for the life of the believer, and maybe the person who doesn't know God?
Well, I have to use a slogan that we adapted to in the fire service, a combination of something Malcolm X said, something one of my mentors, the late Chief Benjamin Perry, in conjunction with myself, had a slogan. You can't teach what you don't know, you can't lead where you won't go, and you can't send where you've not been.
My God.
And that motto has always been at the forefront of the Fire Academy belief system. Matter of fact, as I stated, when I paid a visit to the Academy just a month ago, they still have that saying on the wall.
That's good.
On the wall. My guys handed me a training manual that I wrote 33 years ago.
Wow.
And I said, why do you still have this? They said, Chief, it worked because you took us to the place where you not only taught us what to do, but you taught us how to apply what we know and how to mix that in with experience. And so what I found is that we've got to get in the huddle with everybody. But when the huddle breaks, we got to get on the field with them too.
Boots on the ground. So that's kind of like reminds me of everybody pull up your sleeves and let's go to work, right? So when we look at collaboration or we look at communication, I believe that every relationship rises and falls at the break of communication. So every relationship rises and falls when there's a break in communication or the lack thereof. So when it comes to communication and collaboration, I mean, my goodness, 40 years, you have built, I'm sure, an incredible litmus, an incredible list of people along the way in multiple, like I said earlier, industries. Let's talk about what it looks like to cultivate or to begin to garner a relationship with a person in business.
Well, one of the things I find is necessary is what I call the common thread concept
Mm-hmm.
and common thread communications. I was always the kind of officer that wanted to get to know the people I'm sending into harm's way. Matter of fact, I put it like this. I made it a point not to send anybody into a fire. I made it a point to lead them into a fire. But the one thing I wanted to do before we got into the emergency services end of things is to find out who I had as a person on my crew, who I had, what they were feeling like. And I would always tell my chief officers, first thing in the morning, invite your entire crew to the kitchen, find out who had a bad night, found out who had just lost something valuable, find out who's battling a disease or sickness, or somebody in their family may be doing that. Find out what happened to the person the night before. And that way you can have a conversation with them on how you can expect them to function this day as a team. Because I believe a chain, and I know it's cliche, but it's true, a chain is no stronger than its weakest link. So we need to find out at the beginning of the day before that alarm goes off, what are our weaknesses and what are our strengths?
Mm-hmm.
And what
Mm-hmm.
kind of expectations should we as supervisors have of the people?
Mm-hmm.
If I know I've got a guy that just lost a loved one,
Right.
maybe I'll reassign him that day to something less intense
Mm-hmm.
that may not require him to have the focus in regards to putting other people's lives in his hands
Yeah.
or her hands. I want to find out how the people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always made it a point, be there right with them, show them what to do. And
Yes.
I made it a point with my officers, don't bring me a report, a negative report, a punitive report on somebody that didn't do something the way it should have been done. And my first question to that supervisor was, did you teach this person how to do it right
Ooh. Ooh.
before you
Ooh.
expected him or her to do it right?
Yeah. Well,
And
that's not, so the first thing I hear you saying is compassion. If we're
right,
asking somebody what happened yesterday, or we're taking into account, or we're talking with somebody that they served along with, that to me sounds like compassion. So once
yeah,
you hear the report or whatever it might be, then you can make an informed decision around where to actually put them on assignment. Is that what I heard?
that's correct. That's correct. It might be a day where you have to put them in the office, on desk duty today or something. You might
Yeah.
not be feeling up to doing your best. We don't want you to get hurt. We don't want you to get anybody else hurt. And we want to maintain the strength of this core group. We call fire units companies. Each fire engine and fire truck makes up what is called a fire company. We can use our dictionary to back us up on that. What is a company? A group of individuals that function with a common goal and purpose in mind. Engine company, hook and ladder company, rescue company. We try to build that unified mindset so that even if we get separated in a fire, we know enough about each other to know what certain members will do under stress. This is what we try to do to help build that core and build that connectivity. I've got a slogan again, a lot of slogans in the fire service, and they're still using this one too.
Right.
Under stress, you will perform only as you have trained.
Ooh-wee. Ooh-wee. Say that one again. Only.
Under stress, you will perform only as
Mhm.
you have trained.
Mhm.
That's number
So,
one in my training manual.
so break
So,
that down, because see, that also reminds me. I think about perfect. It's not practice that makes perfect. It's perfect practice that makes perfect.
Absolutely.
And in some cases, you don't have the luxury for a margin of error.
You do
Sometimes
not.
that margin of error is so slim, and I'm sure you know that coming from the military and the fire department, because it could be, and it very well be, a matter of life and death.
That's
So
correct.
let's talk about that. Let's dig into
Well,
that.
Dr. Nash, what I try to do is let's gather as much accurate information going into a project. Here's a little analogy I use. I ask a guy to make me 200 copies of the word dog on a sheet of paper.
Wait a minute. Okay, DOG.
Wait a minute, you're messing with me.
Okay.
I asked this guy for 200 copies of the word dog on a paper.
Okay.
Now, 10 minutes later, he comes back. He hands me a stack of 200 papers. He said, Chief, I'm all done. And I look at it, and dog is spelled D-A-U-G. He said, Chief,
Wait.
I did what you said.
You said DAUG?
W-G. Dog
Oh,
is spelled
dog, like the other kind of
D-A-W-G.
dog.
So the
D-O-W-G.
problem is he made me 200 copies. But Dr. Nash, his original was flawed.
Ooh.
The original copy, dog, was misspelled. Now, when you put something in a copy machine, the copy machine does not correct the error. It just makes more versions of what's not right.
Right, exactly.
So the point that I'm making is let's push for excellence and definitive expression early on. When we establish groups and establish teams, let's get a language that we all understand. Let's have a common thread communication system where you know what I mean. If I say the word, let's talk about a pear. Well, you get three people and they all see it a different way. One person says, okay, it's a piece of fruit. Somebody else says two of a kind. And the third person says that means to shave the skin off of a fruit or vegetable. So sound alone is not enough to establish communications. There has to be explanation along with communication. And we have to find out what language are we commonly going to speak in our assignment, in our situation. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, so it absolutely makes sense. What I absolutely love about what you said is the fact that that copy machine is only going to spit out what you put in it. So if you execute on a level of error, or if you execute on a level of mistakes, and you execute on a level where it's not clearly defined, you're leaving yourself open for mistakes. You're leaving yourself open for all of that to be duplicated. I'm a huge proponent of attempting to teach people to get and develop good habits. I don't want you I don't want you to pick up my bad ones. I used to tell my kids that all the time. I want you to be the best parts of me, right? And that's generally what we want. But we also know that in the midst of all that, they're still going to capture some of the maybe not so good traits. But I like to say it's like gumbo. It's all in there, and it's all still of good use. But it comes down to what are you going to do with it. So I love what you said. Let's go back and talk about, now that I've been able to gather what's going on with this person, because as leaders, we're human, right? In whatever area or industry that you're in, whether that's ministry, vocation, or occupation, we're still human. We still have the same issues. Even as a speaker, something can blow up just while you get ready to go up there. Something happens in your family, in your world, and you've got to deal with it. Or you have somebody else assigned to deal with it. Right. What I want to talk about is when there is a breach, or when there is a break in communication when it comes to a professional relationship. So when we look at military, when we look at fire department, what are some of the things that you've been able to do? Because allegedly, I'm going to say it this way, allegedly, it is identified that men won't talk. I disagree with that, because I happen to know a lot of great men that don't have a problem talking in any room.
Right.
What would you say is the biggest misstep or disconnect, if you will, when there is a problem in communication for men?
Two things: assumption and presumption.
Okay, break that down. Tell
Okay.
the people what that means.
In the area of assumption,
Yeah.
that means we thought we knew what the problem was.
Mm.
We had an idea based on our past experiences and based on what we know about that person.
Yeah.
And so, with that assumption, we acted on it. And that's what I call presumption, is acting on an assumption. We say, well, the last time he or she was exposed to this environment, this is what they did.
Mm.
Well, this might have been a passage of a day, 2 days, a month, a year. You don't know. You don't know what that person dealt with in the meantime. And I say the meantime can get really mean when you got, and I'm playing with the word there. That
It's
meantime, in between time, can be rough because communication has ceased,
mm,
interaction has ceased. And so when we assume, my mentor, Chief Benjamin Perry, had a sign on the wall of his office. This is how he said it: assumption is the law of fools.
wait a minute.
That's
Throw that
right.
back. Rewind. Press play. Assumption is what?
The law of fools. He had it on his office. He was one of my mentors,
Yes,
came on the
I
job
love
in the
that.
1960s, and he was mentored by a chief that came on the job in the 1940s. So the guy from the 40s mentored the guy from the 60s, who
Yeah.
mentored me from the 70s. And what they passed down to me was assume nothing. Get the facts if
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, and I found this to be true, men talk more than people think they do.
Say
They
that
just
again. Say
find a
that
safe,
again.
it's just got to be a safe environment for them to do it.
Yeah.
Now, if they see themselves in an environment where they think they're going to be degraded or belittled or brought down, brother's climbing up. He's not saying a word.
Yeah.
And you say, how you doing today, Lieutenant? I'm okay.
Yeah.
Uh, you feeling okay? Yep. You get these terse one-word answers, you know something's wrong. So in
Yeah.
a case like that, what I would do is tell him, well, first of all, I say, well, my door is open if you want to talk. So I don't force it.
Mm-hmm.
My door is open. Chances are later on that day or next shift, that individual is coming.
Yeah.
Slept on it, thought about it, may have talked about it with some of the other members of the team. But the first thing he's or she has got to know is it's not going to be a hostile conversation
Mm-hmm.
necessarily when they
Mm-hmm.
come in. I'd rather you tell me what's wrong now before we get to an emergency scene and you're
Right.
just not at yourself. And
Yeah.
then a lot of damage is done. But men will talk, Dr. Nash, they will,
I
but they
think so.
just have to feel safe in that environment.
So what I want you to do is can you share with our audience like what do you believe is the greatest level of confusion when it comes to women understanding like what you just said. Okay, so men will give a one word answer, and I'm one of those people. I definitely do get annoyed when folks give me one word answers. Uh, or that's my personality. But I also know that you can't force people to talk. You can't
No.
force people to express themselves. But what I heard you say, what I want to just put a little attention on is creating a safe space. What does it look like to create a safe space for a man, whether that's a man of stature? Even I have two sons, and they're different ages, almost 15 years apart. They're very different, but yet the common thread is I still have to some degree. This is what I've learned over the years. Um, with creating that space is allowing an opportunity for me to listen. I have to create that space of listening, and they know that they're going to be heard. So I don't know if that's spot on, great. But when it comes to how men perceive a safe space, what does that look like?
A lot of times, what I found out in speaking to my personnel on the job, I'd start out by saying, man, this is off the record.
Okay. Oh,
Just those few words, Dr.
yeah.
Nash, changed everything.
Wow.
Because what a lot of people are concerned about is permanent blotches on
Oh,
their performance jacket or something that's going to come back later to bite them in the back end. People just don't want to have permanent stains.
mm,
Now,
wow.
I often tell people, and I tell the guys, listen, man, I've burned some buildings down in my 31 years on the fire department.
Yeah.
wasn't always pretty.
Yeah.
My mentors told me when they burned down buildings, when
Mm.
they made decisions that weren't necessarily the best. And so what I say to them is, listen, off the record. And then I ask them to tell me what went wrong. And then I say, if you were me,
Oh.
how would you handle this infraction?
Mm.
What
That's
would you do
good.
next, Lieutenant? What would you do next, Captain?
Yeah.
See,
That's good.
what I want them to do is see how they would handle it as well and take some of that edge off of me saying to them, yeah, you blew it a little bit here, sir, but this
Yeah.
is how you're going to have to fix it.
Mm.
What would you have done? What would you do? How would you handle it? And what is your solution? And you know what, Dr. Nash, this is just the truth. Even in ministry, I have all my officers, even on the fire department, write their own job descriptions.
Oh, okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
See,
so they write the job description for what? For when they're getting ready to be when there's somebody else coming in to take their position, or they've been promoted, they're moving on. So now they're looking for their replacement. Is that
well,
what? Oh,
upon acceptance of a position,
oh,
I
okay.
generally had them to write the job description.
Oh, wow.
My
Okay.
question would be, what do you think you ought to be doing as a lieutenant?
Oh, okay.
What do you think you should be doing as a battalion chief, as a prophet in the ministry, as a deacon,
Yeah.
as a supervisor over media ministry? What
Yeah.
does that job look like? What would you expect out of yourself if
Yeah.
you had this job?
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't
I
mean,
love that.
Dr. Nash, that I won't tweak it later on.
Right.
It doesn't mean I won't adjust it and give them some other perspectives to look at. But first and foremost, I want to know from you what it is you think you ought to be doing.
Wow.
Because if I find out you have no expectations, then we got more of a blank slate than we need here.
Yeah.
And
I
we
love.
need to kind of frame that a little bit.
Yeah. There's so much meat in that. I'm often reminded that many of us are, I don't really per se agree with this statement that we are products of our environment. I believe that that contributes, but I believe that I don't have to accept a thought process or mindset of fear, because fear and faith, they don't operate in the same space. And God has created me to be a faith, to be a woman of faith. So I can
Right.
slay the environment just by my very appearance because I showed up. It changes things because of that.
Yeah.
And I really believe that. Some folks say it, I say it, spray it, and believe it. And so, because I believe that many of us are inbred by our upbringing to operate with the spirit of fear or lack or uncertainty, what has this always been your life or your way of living and thinking, or was this inbred in you as a child? Is this what your parents taught you, or is this what life and your relationship with God taught you?
I would have to say my father was a military man,
Oh,
uh,
okay. Yes.
retired colonel, United States Air Force,
Wow.
served with a group of the Red Tails.
Oh,
And
nice.
Colonel Bradshaw lived to be 91 years old.
Wow.
Okay.
What a
And
blessing.
he was friends with some of those chiefs that mentored me on the fire department. So I would say there was
Mm,
a certain amount of military decor
mm.
that was in the family. But my mother was also a very strong woman,
Okay.
and father was never really there a lot. Okay,
Mm.
but genetically, I've got a lot of who he was rather. And I would have to say that he's the one that took me to the firehouse when I was a year and a half old and I never left.
Mm.
Okay. I, I never outgrew that.
Yes.
It helped a lot that we lived across the street from the firehouse as well. But I would say my entire environment, friends, family, the community. I lived in Gary, Indiana,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a
Oh,
lot of
wow.
history in Gary. You
Yeah.
know, some of the
The
good, some of the
Jackson.
not so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's the name that people most
Most people
relate
know.
to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that I would have to say all of that contributed to who I am. Plus,
Yeah.
I've always been a thinker. I've always looked into myself to see
Yeah.
what was in there
Yeah.
and tried to pull it out. Was it always easy? No.
Mm-mm.
Did everybody agree with a lot of things I did? Well, absolutely not, and they still don't.
Yeah.
But I've gotten used to being the odd man out when it comes to ideology
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
it comes to concepts in
Yeah.
ministry. They say, well, you can't say that, you can't do that, you can't teach that, this, that, and the other.
Okay.
Well, I never fit into that mold. And so I
Mm-hmm.
always was getting revelation knowledge and certain spiritual constructs that were not common. And I had prophets tell me 40, 45 years ago, you're going to be the odd man out. So you're going to have some thick skin to be able to take it because God's giving you a non-traditional word, a non-traditional platform.
Mm-hmm.
So I became who I am now just by being alive, exposure to the earth, the planet, the atmosphere, and to
Yeah.
everybody in it. I would
Yeah.
have to say some good and some bad rubbed off on me along the way,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, and I hoped for the best. I'm still developing, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that
So
answers your question, but,
So what about those folks that the men that don't have, or so you're blessed, you're very blessed. I know that nobody, we all come here as a blank sheet of paper, and nobody accomplishes great things in life without turmoil. Nobody does.
nope.
Everybody has a story of some kind where things were not pristine, or they weren't ideal. But I just believe that those are the times that we're made in those moments. We don't grow in times when things are great. We grow when things are rough. I mean, when
That's true.
the seed goes in the ground, it's got to go through some things. Root system has to develop. That it has to actually be fed, by
Mhm.
mentors, by examples. What about those people that may not have been blessed? Because there's a lot of abuse in relationships, and we know
Right.
that it happens in the business, in the workplace, right? In the marketplace, it
Yes,
happens a lot.
absolutely.
What about those men that don't have that, did not come from? I don't want to say they didn't come from good roots or good ground, because God makes no mistakes. That's my belief. What about those that may not have had those examples, or may not even have them right now, while they're trying to break free of maybe who they've been in the past? What are some things that they can do right now to turn the corner, or just maybe make a complete 180 and start over? What can they do?
Well, a lot of times it starts with other guys who have quote unquote made it in some areas
Hmm.
that offer themselves as brothers and friends to those that seem like they're on the outer circle, outer perimeter. And the Bible said if a man wants to have friends, he has
What
to show himself
what do you
friendly.
got to do? That's right. Hmm.
So I think all of it may not be necessarily up to that individual. It's up to those of us who recognize that this person needs a listening ear.
Hmm. Hmm.
Again, Dr. Nash in the firehouse. I didn't like that isolationist attitude where one of my crew is in a room over here and another one is in a room over here and another one's. Hey, I say, hey guys, let's start off the day
Yeah.
together. Let's talk and let's have a little time. You know, the guys play cards, they play checkers. The firehouse is the domino capital of the world. You know, the fire station is. And I had one chief. One of my mentors declared himself the domino god. Okay, so
Uh-oh.
and he lived to be 99 years old. Okay, so he
Wow.
knew something.
Okay.
Okay,
You know a little
and
something. All right.
yeah, he knew a little something. And one of my father's friends that embraced me in the fire service. But let's find out what the guy's interests are. You know, if he likes sports, somebody sit down and talk sports with him. If he likes golf, if he likes to do certain things, you bring the new person in and you say, hey man, we got to get to know you. We're a team
Yeah.
here, and
Hmm.
all of our lives depend on each other, man. Tell us about yourself. Who are you? What do you like? What do you not like?
Hmm.
Now, that individual, and it's with women too, because we have ladies in the fire service.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, where I'm currently in Chicago, the Chicago fire chief is a lady.
Oh wow,
And
nice.
I've been knowing her since essentially she came on the job. And
Okay.
she's got like 34 years on the job now. And
Wow.
there's quite a few ladies in the fire service who have come up in the ranks.
I
We have
love
to
it.
learn how to talk to them too.
Yeah.
We have to learn how to not be uh, so set in our minds about this is a man's job. What are you women doing here? You will get written up and be in front of the city council with that kind of nonsense. Now you can't do
Yeah.
that.
Right.
You cannot treat people wrong because they're of a different gender. This is the fire service. We're not even allowed to use the word fireman anymore.
Oh,
It's
wow. Really?
firefighter
Oh, that's right.
and
So,
fire
but
officer.
you've been in this role a long time though. So you certainly probably saw when at a time when women were treated differently.
I did.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, there was a time when
Hmm.
people who looked like you and I were treated
Well,
different. And that's a real part
yes.
of the experience as well, Dr. Nash, because I worked in fire stations that were racially divided,
Hmm. Yeah.
where one persuasion worked on one unit and
Hmm.
people of another persuasion worked on another.
Yeah.
Didn't eat at the same time, didn't sleep in the same dormitory. But you know what's odd? When that fire alarm went off,
Well,
those other guys would crawl into a project tenement house and rescue a little baby of an opposite persuasion, give a mouth to mouth, come back to the fire station and wouldn't talk to you still after that. But they
mm,
just got through saving children that look like us.
right.
Isn't that
Wow.
odd?
That is.
Now, some of them we never did break through, Dr. Nash, because they came from an old school
Yep.
mentality, an old school line of thinking. When I addressed the Fire Academy most recently, I said, everybody, you're a team. Please talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Please talk to each other. If you see somebody having a bad day, at least go say, hey, man, is there any way I can help? Anything I can do?
Right.
Don't try to be the problem solver,
Yeah.
but be the person that acknowledges that there is a problem. Maybe the individual doesn't want you to solve it. He just wants to tell you he's got it.
Right.
He
Exactly.
doesn't want you to have an answer all the time. He just
Mm-hmm.
wants to be able to tell you, Lieutenant, Chief, Captain, Reverend, Pastor, I'm feeling like this today. The fact that you asked me, I feel better already.
Mm.
And I
That's
think
so good.
sometimes where we go wrong is we try to be the repairman. And sometimes we're not called to go that deeply into it, Dr. Nash.
Wow. So,
Sometimes we express the care factor that just says, hey, man, I'm listening if you need me.
mm, hey man, I'm listening.
I'm
Just hey
listening.
man, I'm listening.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the communication though, and people knowing that they need help and need some support, what does it look like for a man to ask for help? I mean, because I know you've seen in many instances where they won't ask for help. What does it look like to do it?
Well, sometimes we find it out through their friends and not from them directly. Sometimes the guys or the ladies that they're close to would say, hey, Chief, uh, firefighter Louise is having a problem. She's not really talking about it to too many people, but I can tell something is wrong with her today. Would you go talk to her? So oftentimes it's that person's chosen circle of friends that may lead on to another leader that somebody's having a difficult time and they need to talk about it. But at other times, you just don't know, Dr. Nash, until something happens and the person does something out of character. And you say, well, Firefighter John, you normally don't perform like this, man. What's wrong? What's on your mind? And he'll say, Chief, this happened to me or that happened to me. But of course, that's after something has fallen through the cracks, so to speak. There is no hard and fast rule on that, Dr. Nash. But what we try to do is build a team so that in this team, if we got 10 persons in the system, somebody will be sensitive enough to pick up that something may be wrong.
Mhm.
And what we try to impress upon them, we're not trying to get in your business. Not trying to be intrusive. You're an adult. We're not trying to tell you what to do, but we care about you and we want to all play it safe out here. This is
Mm.
a dangerous job. Let's be each other's a fence and border and boundary and protective layer, so that
Mhm.
we can do this. And sometime we can start a conversation about something that has nothing to do
Yeah,
with the problem,
right.
and you get them to open it up. And if they feel that ease, if they feel that they're not under attack, they'll start talking and they'll
Mm.
open up. And then today, the way the fire service is now, they have human resources departments
Yeah.
that talk to people every so often. They get
Mhm.
a chance to see counselors. One of my associates in the ministry is a lieutenant on the fire department. He was the chief now, but he's part of my ministry family, and he's the chaplain, and he's
Yeah.
also a chief over a bureau, and he's the guy that they call when they don't feel right,
Mm. Yeah.
even if they've got a drug problem. He's the
Right.
one that they call and say, listen, I've got a problem. I'm turning myself in because I want help. Now, when the member asks for help, the rules are you can't fire them at that moment. You've got to give them that help. You have to put them into a program. You
Yeah.
have to give them an opportunity for expression, and you have to give them an opportunity for healing.
Yeah. That's it.
That's the deal.
Yeah.
If they know they're not going to lose their job the first time, they'll be prone to open up and talk about it and try to get some help and try to follow through with staying clean.
Yeah, and that to me definitely sounds like times when people are wounded.
Oh, yeah.
Being a fire safety for decades and over two municipalities, that couldn't have always been easy. When, especially when you have people that have been wounded, and you can be wounded by a verbal assault. It
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
necessarily have to be physical. When once you get on common ground with someone, I've heard you share this in a couple places, and I don't want to botch it up, but you talk about the two prodigals. Can you tell our audience a little bit about the two prodigals and what that looks like when people are wounded?
Well, the prodigal principle is like this, Dr. Nash. When people read it from the Bible, they only think there was one prodigal son.
Mm.
They think the guy that wanted to get his inheritance up front, he told his dad, give me everything that belongs to me. I'm blowing this joint, man. I'm getting out of here. You
We're not
can't
in here
stop me.
yet.
Step aside, Pops. You can't stop me. I'm doing it. I'm grown. I do what I want to do. So his dad said, okay, here's your portion. So he goes out. And as we all know, it was a disaster. Didn't turn out right.
It
He
didn't
made
turn out
ruin.
for him.
Didn't turn
Right.
out right. He's eating at the pigsty, wallowing in the mire with pigs. Now that's the obvious prodigal, Dr. Nash. But I tell people, look at what happens after this brother returns home. And he said, Dad, can I come back? Father says, of course. He throws him a party, kills the fatted calf, and standing in the corner pouting is the other brother.
Tell the brother.
They said, well, what's wrong with you? Daddy never gave me a party. didn't put a ring on my finger. I've been here all the time. Nobody ever wanted to help me. His daddy said, wait, hold it. He said, all that I have is yours. You lived in the house with me at all times. Everything that I have belongs to you. You know, it's a similitude of God saying everybody's rushing out to find God when the God inside of them is the closest version they'll ever see. The kingdom of God is within you. Know you not that you are the temple of God and the Spirit of God dwells in you? Why do we run to a window, Dr. Nash, and look up for God? God is in the here and in the now. And you can't get any closer than here, and you can't arrive any faster than now. So the two prodigals were an expression of people having everything they need if they're willing to look in the house, in the experience that they are having with God. Know what else I do, Dr. Nash? When an officer comes to me with a problem about a junior uh, officer or other person, I say to them, what did the individual do wrong? And how will you handle this discipline? Some of them will say, well, Chief, I thought you were going to get them. I said,
Yeah.
no, you're the captain, you're the lieutenant. I said, how do you want to handle this? Well, I don't know. I said, well, You can leave my office now, and when you come up with a solution, call me back. But this is your concern. You have to deal with this individual. How do you want to handle it? See, because they like to pass the buck up
Oh,
the ladder. They say, well, the
for
chief
sure.
said, you got
Mhm.
2 days off of this, that, and the other. But the whole thing that I'm saying now is what's in the house? What do you have within you? And oftentimes I try to get people to look at the fact that they are carrying their own solutions in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
They know what to do, but you've got to question them about it. How would you do this? What do you
Mhm.
think ought to be done? What do you see? And it might be considered a psychological ploy, but it's just to make them look at what they already carry, what they already have inside of them. And I found out when I get a person to talking to himself or herself, a lot of times they come up with a solution,
Mm.
and it's right there.
So you're helping them really to do some self-discovery. You're helping them
Yeah,
to find what's already in them. Kind of like the Dorothy syndrome, that you always had it. It was always there. When it
right.
comes to relationships in business and even in ministry, because ministry, while ministry is not an organization, it's an organism. How do you believe procrastination robs us all in relationships, whether that's ministry or in business?
Okay, say that again because it glitched just a little bit.
That's okay. What would you say? How does procrastination rob us in both ministry and or even in business when it comes to relationships?
That's a dangerous situation because generally what you conceal can never be healed.
Ooh, wait. Say that again.
Digging a hole, the only thing that works good underground is seeds.
My God.
Everything else has to be unburied if
Mm,
you're going to fix it.
my God. My
Yeah, I
God.
wish I could say I invented that little slogan, but it's been around for a long time. But the idea is we got to
Right.
discover where the problem is. Again, I keep referring back to fire service experience.
Yeah.
And that is, we go to a fire, we see smoke coming out of every window and every door. It's a 3-story building, Dr. Nash. It might be 50 feet by 100 feet. We pull up with the hoses. Well, where do we put the water? We can't put the water hose in every window that we see smoke
Nope.
coming out of.
Nope. Mm-mm.
So we sent a team in called the IRT, Initial Response Team. They go in with breathing apparatus on to locate
Right.
the actual flames because
Ooh.
smoke is not the location of the flames. Smoke is a byproduct. So a lot of the behavioral issues we see with people are not really what we call the seat of the fire. Those are byproducts. So we got to try to find where the fire really is because we don't put water on smoke. The building will burn for days. We
Wow.
put water on fire. So somebody has to be able to say, let's go to the root of what's really causing this rift in the office. What's
Ooh.
really causing this problem? And you know what else I've used before?
It's a byproduct.
I've used a tell-all box. You don't sign your name to it, but you drop your complaint in the box and you say, Chief, such and such has happened. Now, sometimes, with handwriting, you could tell who did it. Okay. I wasn't
Yeah.
all the way out of the loop, Dr. Nash, but I said, okay, I think I know who this is coming from. But the point is, they know they got heard
Right.
and they know without any kind of backlash, they were able to voice their complaint. So we can find out what's really wrong with this crew.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's really
Man,
what's really wrong with them? You
that's
know,
so good about the smoke is only the byproduct. Man, that
that's
there's
it.
so much in that. There is so much in that because I the first thing I think about is beauty for ashes, how God will give us beauty for ashes, right?
Right.
So when I hear that smoke is only the byproduct of the fire. So since we're talking about firemen and firefighters and
Right.
firefighting and the industry of fire, how do you find the fire? How do you find where the real problem is? And we can correlate that with communication. Like, how do you
Well,
find the problem?
In my original experiences of coming on the job in the 70s, we did it the old-fashioned way. In order to find the fire, you took a glove off and you held your hand up. And when the hairs on the back of your hand started getting singed, that meant you were close to the flame. You were crawling on the floor, Dr. Nash. You couldn't breathe. You didn't have any air tanks or any of that kind of safety equipment. You couldn't see. There was only 2 inches of air on the floor. So that's how we did it in the old days. The hotter it got, the closer we were to the flames. Okay? That's how we did it. We crawled through 2 or 3 rooms full of smoke. But when we encountered that intense heat, we say, here's where the fire is. You know how we do that nowadays? Infrared cameras.
Oh, right. Technology.
The firefighter sticks the camera into a room. He can see a child hiding under a bed. He can see a person in a closet.
Wow.
By the infrared outline of that person's body. They can put the fires out faster and more efficient today because they've got equipment that locates the problem through the smoke, through the gray areas.
Yeah.
And that's how they do it. We had to crawl in. We had to break a lot of windows, and people say, why are you breaking our windows? We had to let the smoke out so we could see. Once we can see, and oftentimes I would tell the firefighters, turn the water hoses off. Why? Because water on fire creates smoke.
Ooh.
Let the fire breathe a little bit. Let it flare up so we can locate it.
Right.
Once we locate it, we'll put all the water on it we need to. But we got to find it first.
Yes. Yes. So that's really, when we look at collaboration and when we look at even a breakdown in communication, there's a fire. So I believe a lot of people don't want to address the fire. They rather just let it burn. Let it burn, rather than trying to find the root of the fire. Because if they're willing to just take the heat and the pressure of the fire, then they can find the root cause of it, which then allows them to be able to address it.
That's
and
right.
Put it out. Put the
That's
fire
right.
out.
Sometimes we have to ask the hard questions.
Ooh, all the time.
Groups of people.
All
They
the
say, well,
time.
I don't want to stir the pot, Chief. I don't want to bother them. I said, well, you got to bother them. I said, because you know what fire does when you don't do anything about it, right? It spreads. You had one house, now you've got 2. Now you've got 3 going. Now you've got a whole block. I've been unfortunate enough to be at a fire where 2 blocks of buildings were burning, Dr. Nash.
Wow.
2 blocks. So if you don't stop it, you have one guaranteed outcome. Spread.
Which is more damage. Spread is more damage.
So when you got a person in the crew, in the team, that's always got a bad attitude, always belligerent, always unhappy, you got to get to the root of that. And you might feel kind of like, I don't know if I want to bother this guy, but listen, we better find out early on what's hurting that person. Maybe we need to have that person hospitalized.
Ooh.
Maybe HR needs to get a program in place for this person. Maybe we need to do an intervention. I've had to do that before, where I had members on my crew that were on drugs. Now, they were some really hardcore knockdown, drag out firefighters, but other habits began to develop. And I had to say, man, I hate to come at you like this, but I got to take you off duty, man.
Yeah.
Because you've got a problem. You're going to get yourself or somebody else hurt. Sometimes they resented it. Sometimes they say, yeah, Chief, I need some help, man. Just I need help. But if we let them go on and on, we've had guys that overdosed.
Yeah. Because of nobody's willing.
Come to work, right? And we say, well, what happened? He didn't report for work. And they went to his house and they found him deceased because the thing was not dealt with in time. There were signs, but nobody addressed it.
And that's primarily because people would just ignore it.
Yeah.
My gosh, I see that. And
some things don't go away, Dr. Nash. Fire will not go away unless you do something.
Come on here. Look, that's the whole
thing. That's the one thing you don't want to just, let it burn. What the heck? It'll be all right. No.
That's good.
It'll be burning all the way to grandmama's house, okay? the whole community will be aflame.
Yeah. The fire will not go away. That's the message. So you can't ignore it. You cannot ignore it. Otherwise, it just creates more and more and more damage. Man, that is so good. You can't just hope that away.
You
You gotta
cannot.
you gotta deal with it. And you may have to call in for some help. A lot
You
of it.
might have to. Dr. Nash, I live in the city with the most famous fire in U.S. history,
Uh-oh.
the
Tell us
Chicago
about it.
fire.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
The
Uh-huh.
Chicago Fire Academy is built on top of the area where the supposed barn was and Ms. O'Leary's cow kicked over the lamp. Come to find out, Ms. O'Leary's cow was totally innocent. They took it to court. The cow was exonerated. It was a guy who was snatching purses, and he ran through the barn and kicked over a lantern, and that's how the fire came. But my point for saying this is the location of the fire, the original place of the fire. You can go into Chicago and go miles away from that location and see property that has markers that said the Chicago fire covered all the way to this area. Miles, miles from where the original flames kicked off. One fire that was not stopped in time. It even leaped over the Chicago River and got buildings on the other side because embers traveled in the air. What's the similitude of embers traveling? People with rumors, people with opinions, people that say things about problem areas, and instead of helping, they fan the flames. Does that make sense? They bring up things that don't help the situation at all. And you got this huge out of control event now.
Hmm.
But that happened in the Chicago fire, and that happens oftentimes with workplace relationships. Well, I thought this and I thought that. Well, if you wanted to know, why didn't you just ask what the facts were? Why didn't you try to get to the bottom of it? Why didn't we have a team meeting of some kind?
Yeah.
And say, okay, nobody's going on report at this meeting. This is off the record. We just want to clear the air and talk to each other.
Yeah. So doing
Give people
nothing actually fans the flame.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
Chicago fire was out of control.
Wow.
It went for miles,
Yeah.
miles.
I feel like I remember that. So how did they finally get it out?
Well, it's like this. The buildings all burned down.
Ooh!
They had firefighters from
Yeah.
across the region that came. And
Yeah.
actually, one building in the city of Chicago was not damaged by fire. It still stands today and it's a monument. It's called Water Tower,
Water tower.
made out of native limestone. It didn't burn. The fire burned completely around it for miles,
Wow.
and it was a water tower, and it didn't burn. So they were able to cover the perimeters and put the fires out because if you soak the perimeters, what's already burned is burned. And it can't go any further if it's trying to burn something wet. So you wet up the edges, the perimeters,
Yeah.
and you get that soaked down so the fire cannot go any further. Now, it did jump the river, the
Yeah.
Chicago River. It did do that. But for the most part, you wet up everything surrounding it so it can't go any further. But that was a monumental task.
Yeah.
Monumental,
Yeah. I'm just wondering, like,
monumental task.
what was that building? And you probably know this, I'm sure. What was that building made of that kept it from not burning?
Native limestone. Native
Native
limestone.
iron stone. So what is that?
That limestone pit is in this area south of Chicago,
Mm.
the largest native limestone pit in the world
Wow.
is south of Chicago.
Yeah.
That limestone didn't burn.
Man. I
Now
can.
they constructed a new firehouse out of that limestone in
Yeah.
1902 and
Mm-hmm.
built it as a monument to what took place when the Chicago fire occurred. But that native limestone didn't burn.
My goodness. That is
The
really
fire burned all the way to the north side of Chicago, I'd say 20 blocks north
yeah.
and 20 blocks east, 20 blocks south. It just miles of carnage, miles,
Yeah.
miles of carnage.
My God.
And
That.
unfortunately, personalities are not fire resistant. And there's a lot of damage, man. People get hurt when things happen. Sometimes they recover,
Woo!
sometimes they don't. You
Wait, say
know,
that again. Personalities are not fire
not
resistant.
fire resistant. Because Dr. Nash, nothing is fireproof.
No,
There's
no,
no such word. In the
no.
fire service, we don't allow anybody to use the word fireproof. Nothing is fireproof.
Yeah, yeah, nothing is
If
fireproof.
you get glass hot enough, it'll run like butter.
It sure will. You better say that. Sure
That's
enough.
right. Steel, when it gets hot enough,
Yeah.
will run like butter.
Will run like butter. My God. My goodness. That just speaks to the testament of our God. My
Yeah,
goodness.
that's
My
right. If you get rock hot enough, what do you call it? Lava. Runs like butter.
runs like butter.
It's just real.
My goodness, my goodness. Listen, I
That's
can't
God,
even
our God.
believe I could just I could talk to you for hours. I can't believe our time is already coming to a
Got a little
close. Um,
interference here.
uh-oh. Can you
Got a
hear
little
me?
interference, Dr. Nash.
Uh-oh.
Hardly, it's breaking up some.
All right. So when it comes to I can't believe, like I said, I can't believe our time is coming up for a close already. I've got to already look at where I'm going to bring you back. But I do have a few rapid fire questions, and that is, when first of all, what would you say is one word that best describes you, and what has serving in this capacity with fire taught you the most?
It's taught me to be deliberate.
Mm.
That's my word. I'm a very deliberate person. I try not to do anything that doesn't have an end game.
I love that.
All of my efforts are toward an expected end,
Mm.
as we say in scripture. God said, I
Yeah.
know the thoughts that I think toward you, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an
Yeah.
expected end. What's the outcome?
Mm. What is the outcome? My last question that I have, I ask everybody this question, and that is, what would you say is the lesson that took you the longest to learn?
My God, patience. I didn't have very much. I'm still working on it right now because, as intense as I am, at times I can expect other people to be as intense and as attentive to a thing as I am. That's just not the real world. So, having to slow down sometimes and understand that people are seeing things a different way than I am, and that people have a different life experience and they have a different protocol for life. And so having to see it their way often means that I have to rewind and I might have to go into standby mode. And it's not looking down on them or their methodology, but it's just me having to become attentive to the fact that everybody's different and being patient with people in their processes. Got to admit that one, Doc.
That is the truth. Well, listen, I have to tell you that it's been my delight and my privilege to have you tonight. We have learned a lot. I certainly have. And I definitely believe that those of you that are listening out there, you'll go back and you will discover that you have learned a lot too. Is there anything coming down the pike for you? What's next for Dr. Gordon Bradshaw? What's coming up?
Well, we've got our new projects out, Manophysics, which
Okay.
is the science of faith, and Manamorphosis. These are two phrases that we've coined, and we've gotten the copyrights on those, and also we're getting them trademarked.
Okay.
The metaphysics community believes that they own the study of thinking and
Mm,
behavior. But I say we base ours on the manna or the word of God. So it's not metaphysics. For us, it's manaphysics.
whew,
And
yeah.
it's not metamorphosis we're concerned with, it's metamorphosis. How does the word of God change us?
Yes.
That's what we're working on now. So we launched that. Actually, we've had it on standby since 2017, but
Wow.
we've launched it on some other platforms, and we're taking it global, showing people that the word of God has transformative power
Yeah.
and things can change for good. All things work together for good to them that love God and are the called according
Oh,
to his purpose.
isn't that the
Yes,
truth?
ma'am.
Well, I got to tell you, it has been a delight to have you tonight. And you definitely will keep us posted, keep us up to date on all that you're doing, so that we can continue to follow along, right along with you on your journey. And again, I do thank you tonight for being my guest, and can't wait to have you back. So we do
Well,
hope that you have a wonderful week.
I'm honored, Dr. Nash. Thank you so much, and blessings be upon you and all of your endeavors. Nothing but success.
All
Thanks
right.
again.
Well, we definitely receive it, and we thank you and salute you. Until the next time.
Thank you.
All right, you all. Now, listen, I hope that you all have enjoyed every single moment of that. What a delight. What a time to have with Dr. Gordon. Sometimes you really have to take a pause and look at what rooms are you in, because I met him just being in the right place at the right time with the right message. So my wealth theory for tonight is very simple. We heard a lot of good goodies, good goodies from Dr. Gordon Bradshaw. One of the items that lifts right off the page for me is you cannot ignore a fire. You cannot ignore it. We learned tonight that smoke is only the byproduct of the fire, but you can't ignore it. You can't just let it die out. There's really no such thing. It has to be attended to. And so does every relationship in our lives. It must be attended to. That's if we plan on allowing it to flourish and be all that God has called it to be. So listen, I want to remind you to be sure to go over to the Bullpen Show with me, Camille Nash, the redhead, in the Facebook group. You can go there, get connected. That way you'll be able to stay tuned in with everything going on, not only with what's happening here in the bullpen, but all of our guests. You definitely want to know what's going on with Dr. Bradshaw. That was sounds like what he has coming is truly going to be a blessing to millions and millions around the world. So that's where you're going to go, so you can stay connected socially to everything that we're doing, in order for you to not miss one moment of anything happening here in the bullpen. And again, as I say every week, it's been my delight and my privilege to serve you in this way. Please do not hoard the information. Don't take it. Don't take it and do nothing with it. Take it, read it, and share it, so that those that receive it, they can run with it and live it for their life. So again, we thank you. We want to encourage you to have a wonderful evening. Until the next time, good night.